Alright, people, alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa, wa ba'd. Fassalamu Allahi ala al-qawm. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum wa marhaban. Wanjing Leute, bienvenidos a todos. Bakhair Ragle, Khushamadid, and as always, Swagatam. Alright, mi gente, ¿cómo están? ¿Qué está pasando? What's going down, people? What's going down? First, let me just check, as always, that the sound's coming through fine. Otherwise, I'll just be chatting to myself. You'll be like, nothing new there, Mufti. Ab kya kare? Alright, look at the... You know what? I'm always fidgeting every week and the layout's different. I don't know if I'm feeling this layout, but you guys can't see it. Let me just expand on this. Let me just check the... Alright, so whilst you're... What's this? Somebody saying... Salam... Wasim. Oh, Wasim. Are you planning on doing... Right, people, if you can hear everything, let me just bring up the, as always, mi gente on YouTube. Un momento. There they are. Right, don't... Mufti, you look tired. Did you just wake up? No, I didn't wake up, but, yeah, tired, yeah. Definitely. Sound is good, shukran. Nope, I still haven't had my sleep yet. So, mi gente, alright, let me just, as always, let me begin by, not by doing this, but this is just so I can set out, I can bring out my, my coffee mug, just put it here, alright. On top of, it's not really nice, is it? On top of an Orientalist book. So, people, let's begin with some sha'iri, as always, some ash'ar, to just get us into the mode and the mood. Alright, so, the legend, none other than the Don himself, people. John Ilya.
अज़ियत व आज़ार ही रहो बेजार हो गई हो बहुत जिंदगी से तुम वाह बेजार हो गई हो बहुत जिंदगी से तुम बेजार हो गई हो तो बेजार ही रहो ये भी एक टेक्निक है साहब जिंदगी की मैं इब्तिदाई इश्क से बेमेहर ही रहा तुम इंतहाई इश्क का मेयार ही रहो क्या कहने तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई वाह हाय तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई इस रंग इस अदा में भी पुरकार ही रहो मैंने ये कब कहा था मोहब्बत में है नजात
हाय
मैंने ये कब कहा था
कि मोहब्बत में है नजात
मैंने ये कब कहा था वफादार ही रहो
वाह वाह
हाय people मैंने ये कब कहा था कि मोहब्बत में है नजात When did I say that love will bring about success? That it will be the source of your salvation? When did I say this? मैंने ये कब कहा था कि मोहब्बत में है नजात मैंने ये कब कहा था कि वफादार ही रहो That he's saying, when did I say remain loyal? I never said that. John Ilya is an absolute don. I have to say, an absolute don. So, people, what has been going down? What else? I'll be taking a look at some of your questions. Right, so... Right. Check out the channel. Farid Responds. That's our beloved, I take it. Ganguteli Saab. Ganguteli Responds. You Ganguteli. Al-Bahraini. and responds, he destroyed apostate prophet. Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched anything of Ganguteli, to be honest with you, but but yeah, on apostate prophet, I know he's made some video response. He's saying a reply to Mufti Abu Layth. अब कुछ पल देखे हैं पर बोर हो गए थे हम. This one big problem, you know, this one you get bored, you know. So to be I've only seen a bit of it. Maybe I'll sit down and watch the rest. From what I saw, he was like saying, I only watched a few minutes. He was saying, oh, Mufti didn't even understand. This was not even a debate. Of course, I wasn't prepared because this wasn't a debate. I was like, yaar, वही वहां अब वो वाली तरकीब नहीं चलेगी. Speaking of that, people, I did get us a let me see where we at, mi gente. Is this is it this? Oh no, this ain't it. But you can see, watch this to cheer up. This is the kind of reply it is, though. Oh, ya salam, ya salam. But I got something for you guys here. Oh. Wrong one. Oh, so this is it, people. Those of you that don't know, this is Khadim Hussain Saab. And here he has his epic solution on how to rid Pakistan of global debt. So what is this solution, you might think? He's like, I can deal with it like this. He's saying, you guys are stressed, huh? Stress. What, this one? So here is his solution.
साढ़े कोल नुस्खा मौजूद है कर्जे उतारने दा साढ़े कोल नुस्खा मैं
आज
get
rid of all the debt, people.
मुफ्त नुस्खा है पूरी दुनिया नु कहो भाई सूद चूंकि साढ़े इस्लाम में जायज कोई नहीं ते सूद असी कोई नहीं देना निकलो सूद असी कोई ना नहीं देना चलो उन्हें असल पैसे देंगे लेकिन उस वेले देंगे जिस दिन होंगे जो तड़ी दे खान ते उन्हें क्या आओ भाई लो जी पाकिस्तान का कर्ज उतर नहीं गया सूद असी नहीं देना अल्लाह रसूल ने सानू मना किया ते जेड़ा बड़ करे उनके असल पैसे देंगे लेकिन उदों जदों पाकिस्तान के हालात ठीक हो जाने असल का असी इनकार नहीं करो तो असी तुहानू देने जो कवन जी असी चढ़ाई करनी उन्हें कहा लो जी गौरी आया फिर.
So he's saying that the way, the solution to rid Pakistan of debt is that we're going to say to the people, the World Banks, IMF, whoever it is, we're going to say, well, the interest we can't return because it's haram. So that's just tough. And the asal, the original money that we've borrowed, we will return that. We will. But once we have it. What else? And he goes, we make it clear that the interest we're not going to give because it's haram, so full stop. So don't bother asking. And the original fund that we borrowed, we will give you once we have it. Up until then, don't bother us. And if you kind of like give us some, like, what are you on about? Then we're going to say, hello bhai, Gori aaya. Gori is the Pakistan nuclear warhead. It's named after the fighter. So that's some amazing insight on global economics in a day and age of the global repression. Right, so people, what is going on? Sorry, did I say repression? Recession. It is getting late, as you can see. So, what are some questions? Somebody said John Elia was sick in love. Yep, he was. John Elia was a legend, people. Somebody said, Mufti, my super chat. Your super chat said, Let me get to it. Capo Khan said, when we getting 2 hours Mufti Masala? Going down. Mufti Masala, you gotta wait for it, you see. You gotta give people everything in its right place. you. Nutty. Trying to get a full 2 hour Masala roast. Inaya, you're doing it. Drama intensifies. Yeah, you do these late. I gotta do these earlier, but hey, you know, I do it on time. It's just time speeds up ahead of me, you know. In the words of John Elia, आदमी वक्त पर गया होगा, वक्त पहले गुजर गया होगा. That's just the story, people, of my life. Shamroz, Mufti Saab, how are you? Shukran, Shamroz ji, I'm well, lillahi alhamd. Jalaluddin at-Tabari, Jalaluddin Tiberius. Good question from Ghalib. Ghalib says, is there a difference between ruh and nafs, or can they be used interchangeably in the Quran? Room is Gangu and nafs is Mufti. Pak Channel said. Somebody said they love the cup. Yep, look at that. It's a prescription cup, people. All right, and also my Facebook, gente was going down. They stopped the biocoli, excessive biocoli. What is a biocoli? Ashi. The biocoli ashi. And I thought I need to be more sober. Allah. Hi. So what is going on? Right, let's go to Ghalib's question. Is the ruh and the nafs the same thing in the Quranic discourse? You see, it's difficult. I think I do believe it's the same thing, but I believe it's different dimensions of the same thing. It depends what you're addressing. So it's more about that the ruh is at the layer of consciousness, in my understanding, and it's connected to the other arwah. There's like a social network of consciousness, which then ultimately must be from the ruh that Allah had bestowed into creation. So maybe there's some kind of like a consciousness stream. Now, the nafs is the individualized perception of that ruh. So it's more an interplay of that consciousness, but with your bodily reactions to and your genes, and there's a kind of interplay of so for example, you see, I mean, this is a poor example, but still, it's an approximation. It's like saying that if the signal is what is coming from, so I don't know, from, let's say it's a phone signal, and it's coming from the main company, but then it's being received on the handset. Now the handset has a certain amount of interplay with that signal, in how good it is, in what it allows this handset to do. It also is, you know, it may be different, varying from handset to handset. So that's a poor approximation, but to give you some idea, in a similar way, now I am a person who, no surprise there, but who will have not just my conscious experiences, but they are then seen through an interaction with my biological essence. So the way I am, the way my brain is, the way my physiology, genetic makeup will shape partially, or it will have a kind of a bidirectionality, a feedback with the ruh. So nafs that's, in my understanding, what a nafs is. It is the self, which is to do with consciousness, but it is the very individualized experience of that person via consciousness is then the self. Now, there are many other theories on what the self is in psychology, the bundle theory and other things. But anyway, in the Quran, the Quranic discourse does address them slightly different. It doesn't address the ruh per se. It addresses the nafs on occasions, but it describes the ruh as coming from God. You know, that we nafakhna, that we breathed into Adam min ruhina, from our ruh into him. And it gives the idea that the ruh is somehow connected with your awareness of life. And then it kind of highlights that you don't actually know too much about the ruh. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You've only been given you don't fully understand how this works. And that's why I feel it ties in so well with consciousness. That, despite all our technological advancement, we still remain none the wiser when it comes to consciousness. So that's the Quran, when it addresses the nafs, it shows that it has different sides to it. Ar-radiyat al-mardiyya, the pleasing self, the self that is good or virtuous, the nafs al-lawwama, the kind of lamenting, remorseful self. So it shows that there are this kind of it's multifaceted in that sense, that there's various angles to this self. But it doesn't make things very clear. It's not like if you read the Quran, it's going to say that, okay, this nafs deals with this is like this is like... This is just people's reading of the Quran. So I'm reading it, this is my reading of it. Somebody else may read it and say, oh, there's different types of anfus, different types of nufus, nafs. And one is the nafs al-lawama, one is the nafs al-mutma'inna, one is the nafs al-radiyat al-mardiyya, one is the... And somebody may say, no, these are just different descriptions, as you would describe a person. That this person, oh, he's right now tired, oh, he's full of energy, he's full of... These are not necessarily distinct people. These are the same person, but they're in separate, at separate moments. So, yeah, I hope that sheds some clarity. Alright, what is his upload speed? Listen to Mufti Saab, guys. Stop being thirsty. Yeah. Yo, people, behave. Speedy. Guys, enough of this flirting online. People, come on, and just because some admin are female, control nahi hota hai yaar. Control this one, This one not nice, my friend. Right? Otherwise, I have to curtail, where is this one, I have to curtail the... So people, this one nice, my friend. Right, so Mufti fix can the moderators please remain focused? Right, remain focused. Shukran. Right, so what do you think of the whole Amin Navabi Twitter insult of the Hindu god Kali Ma and the response by Hindus? Farhan, I'm not actually aware of it. So do send it to me and I'll check it out. And then I'll form an opinion. Yeah, so Right, what is going down? Frody flirt with us, right? No flirting on the muscular Mufti. Kaha yaar, kaha? Teasing me, these people. You nutty. Is Kalima racist? Kalima Shakti de. Because it's Kali, because she's black. That's why. Oh, I didn't even think of that. No, but Kalima is black. She is a black idol, a jet black idol. So that's why they're calling her Kalima. They're not. I don't think they're trying to say she's black as a racial thing. It's more that she is, because some of the deities like are blue and all kinds of colors, so she is black in color. Kalima has a chitta bap. Behave, people, behave. Thoughts on Neoplatonism? Rather, people, rather. So yeah, Neoplatonism. Well, you see, Plato, the whole Platonism is really based on, you've got mainly Plato's ideal of the forms and things like this, but this goes through a huge shift, which is actually quite different later on. Speaking, it's more used to do things like justify the existence of God, and the arguments of I suppose similar to the kind of ontological arguments, the existence of, well, there must be, if there is being, and there must be, because Plato has these forms. So Neoplatonism is not actually Plato, but it's later philosophers, many of which were from, what would be Egypt, modern day Egypt, and other people as well, who were influenced by various Greek thought that then used this philosophy to substantiate theology, belief in God. So, yeah. But man, you said in a hadith, in ecstasy, a person says to God that he is his master. He is his master. Is this not shirk, and should we not be against any fun which leads to ecstatic state? You see, this is why that hadith is an amazing hadith, because it goes to show that we really need to be so rigid and so strict, and because the hadith demonstrates that the Prophet is saying that a person li shiddatil farah, out of an ecstatic a state of ecstasy overcoming him, he says, thank you, God, you are my slave and I am your Lord. Your ecstasy. So yeah, and to me that is amazing. It's not something which it goes to show that really what matters is people's intentions and what they really meant to say, not sabqul lisan, something where you just utter something. And this whole thing, like talaq, for example, is such a thing. It's based. There's a huge opportunity that the scholars just ignored here, because so much of the ummah is unfortunately suffering, afflicted from this talaq tragedy, that they're giving talaqs, and oh my God, I'm regretting it, and oh my God, and really talaq ought to only be a formal process, and unless it's done formally, it is invalid. So unless a person undertakes a formal talaq procedure, talaq proceeding, like how they undertake a nikah proceeding, like when they not proceed, but nikah ceremony. So they undertake a proper ceremony, contact a masjid, they make a booking, register a nikah, have a ceremonious event, albeit a small one. It could be a small event, but it's an event. Similarly, there is an exit kind of event with a, either wherever they are in the world, the courts, Muslim courts, or Sharia councils, or maybe some places, masjids, they contact them, make a booking for the talaq documentation, undertake a process, and then a talaq should be valid. These, just utterances and people in a state of regret and then crying, and I don't mean this and I don't mean that, and I said it out of anger, and it just, it just ruins people's state of, it just ruins their peace of mind. It ruins lives, or at least devastates many people. So, yeah, but this comes back. I feel we could tie this in with this hadith that the person is saying to Allah, you are my slave. But that's not blasphemy. It's actually, ironically, a form of gratitude. He was trying to express gratitude. His words came out differently, but Allah knows the reality of events. Mufti, why is al-Frabri causing confusion in the chat? Guys, okay, mods, please keep it a bit focused and positive. But if people are if they're just being absolute twats, then just block them. But otherwise, it's good. You can just tell people off. How can I respectfully ask for a girl's wali? Forget the girl, just go for the wali. He's like, until I was impressed with the girl, but once I met her wali.
Launches, bro.
He's like, the wali just launches, bro. So now him and the wali are getting married. Yeah, I mean, I don't get these things, to be honest with you. I feel that they kind of they're overdone. I feel things should just be natural, based on your culture, on the culture that you have, whatever your social, whatever that is, the custom. People just have to do what they do, isn't it? If they like someone, they can try and engage and see, and if they feel it's good, then and they want to take it forward, then by all means. But I don't have an issue with people. I think it's perfectly normal for people to meet. I think people have always met. They're saying Kabul in Afghanistan. Of course, girls and guys can meet. But I say there's nothing wrong in getting a coffee, going, or if people want to get a meal, and just getting to know each other, if that's what they want to do. Cool? Right, so Haram Bey says, his message just got, Mufti sir, I greet you. Haram Bain. I thought Haram Bey. Well, I greet you too. So, someone asked regarding Islamic nations ignoring Uyghur holocausts such as Pakistan and Iran. Shukran Inaya for the question. I didn't see that super chat. So, yeah, I mean, what is the real sitcho on the Uyghurs? Why is Pakistan silent on it? Why is Iran silent on it? Why are other countries? You see, I think sometimes it is difficult for people as well. Although I definitely agree that there is a human rights violation crisis taking place with the Uyghurs, and people worldwide, regardless of race, faith, religion, creed, color, they need to, they should all be in solidarity that wherever there are human rights violations, they should be condemned. So I agree with that. But the question on how much of the Uyghur thing is kind of really an anti-Islamic thing, or is it a political matter? To be honest, even to me, it's not actually that clear. I don't know. Like, I see these clips, people say, oh, China is doing this, China is doing this. But then you see other things which don't then add up. That, you know, this thing of like China has this systematic hatred for Islam. I don't personally buy that. I find that difficult to believe because, you know, there's many Chinese people that are native and ethnically which represent the main Chinese clans that live in places like Beijing, or they live in Shanghai and these kind of places, and they are part and parcel of everyday Chinese life. And they never seem to have any discrimination. Their masjids never seem to be shut down. They never seem to be so I don't know. I mean, you know, on one hand you get this, oh, they're force feeding people pork. It's the Spanish Inquisition resurrected. It's, I don't know. Honestly, I genuinely, I would love to gain more clarity on the matter. But I mean, I definitely agree that there is a human rights violation. I agree on that much, and that should be condemned. The difference is the violation because of certain political aspirations of that region as a separatist movement. So regardless of religion, so if the Uyghurs happen to be Sikh, they would still be suffering because of the kind of the separatist movements that have happened there, the politics of the last decade, the things that have been taking place. So China would still have clamped down on them in the, you know, despotic way that it has. Or is it that they're only doing it because they don't care about anything? It's only to do with Islam. They just can't stand Islam. And that is a tough sell to me. I don't buy that they can't stand Islam. I don't think Islam is even part of the equation. I think it's because of the political issues. That doesn't justify tyranny. But what I'm trying to say is the thing that's being pushed is not necessarily the human rights. That is being pushed secondarily. But primarily what a lot of people are pushing is this anti-Islamic kind of creed that China is allegedly, you know, believing in and promoting, and that I just don't know. I don't know. That's my yeah. So Hui Muslims was a perfect example. So if you look in China, in Zhonghua, all right. So you get the Zhongwen people, the Chinese people, and or the Hanyu, and they will usually be main representative clans that are native to China. And they span into I believe, is it 7 or something major clans, which most of the ethnicities within China fall into. And the Hui people are one of the major clans. And they have many Muslims amongst them, many, and they are part of mainstream. So they're not in these kind of like regions like the Uyghur, like these kind of Turkmenistan, kind of these regions of China that are that don't like when you think of China, you don't really think of them, that they're just entirely Muslim regions because of what they neighbor. So when you look at mainland China and what comes, the stereotypical image that comes to you of people like the Hui people, they're not persecuted at all. So this is what makes me very skeptical of all this anti-Islamic propaganda. Right, so Yep, on the periphery. Shukran, Ziryab. Have you studied Chinese history and theology? No, I'm familiar with certain parts of it. I was studying Chinese for a little while, and then I had to put it on pause because I had to focus on Spanish. So, but at the time, I studied that for a good little while, and part of that I used to learn about Chinese culture, Chinese people. My teachers were obviously Chinese. I used to have weekly classes, and we'd often talk about politics, talk about history, talk about stuff to me. So that was my kind of learning really on China. Haram Bain saying I'm skeptical of your analysis. कोई बात ही नहीं है यार. Even I'm skeptical of my analyses. Right, so what is going on? People, let's take a look at some of the things. Let's take a... What did I say I was going to speak about? Well, let's go to... Alright! Look at that right there, people. None other than the man behind the epic recitation, Abdurrahman as-Sudais, Sheikh Abdurrahman as-Sudais. This and the whole new controversy of تطبيع العلاقات مع إسرائيل. Okay, so normalizing relations with Israel. So what is going on, people? What is going on? Oof. So those of you that are familiar, I'm sure pretty much everyone is, that recently UAE announced its kind of normalization of relations, diplomatic relations with Israel, to bolster certain business and trade opportunities and other kind of things for tourism. Now, alongside that, there was the headlines of Trump placing a certain amount of pressure on MBS and the Saudi regime to also move towards normalizing relations and establishing a kind of friendly, fraternizing, sleeping with the enemy. Trump goes, यार आप भी बिस्तर में घुस जाओ यार. He goes, यार इतना बड़ा बिस्तर है, and what's the Saudi regime doing outside? We've got Netanyahu in here, we've got the al-Zaid, we've got Trump is in there. यार MBS ना हो तो मजा नहीं आएगा यार. So they've asked Saudi Kingdom to get on board as well. Now, part of that was just a few days ago, Saudi Arabia had announced that the Israeli airlines can use Saudi airspace to travel to the UAE. So Netanyahu also, made a speech about how great this was, and it's going to save an incredible amount in fuel and time. It's going to bolster trade and tourism, and it's amazing, he was saying. So Saudi had allowed that. That's only been that's within this week or so. And following that, Sheikh Abdurrahman as-Sudais, Allah. I have to say, by the way, from all the Qurra, all the reciters of the Quran, I till date absolutely love Sheikh Abdurrahman as-Sudais' tilawa. Honestly, he is my go-to still. Sheikh Abdurrahman as-Sudais and Sheikh Shuraim. I'm very old school. I know there's a lot of people like... Shatari is awesome as well, but these two, to me, are old school, but they still hold the heavyweight belt, as far as I'm concerned. So, Sheikh Abdurrahman as-Sudais gave a speech. In it, in his Friday sermon, khutbah, he announced that, look, we are taught in Islam to normalize, to have friendly relations with the Jews. The Prophet ﷺ treated them well. He mentioned that the Prophet, the example which I often give for other scenarios, that even when the Prophet passes away, one of his final trade transactions was with a Jewish trader of Medina. He mentioned that the Prophet had a treaty with some Jews of Khaybar, stating that they can keep all their land and the produce, provided there's a certain amount that they gave as a tribute. Now, so he was trying to say that, look, this brings people towards Islam. It demonstrates the lofty character that Muslims have, and just good manners and civility. So this, Twitter just absolutely blew up with this. So you had so many people, they were on there saying, what the hell is Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Sudais? Look at that, people. There it is. Right, so people were saying, what on earth is Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Sudais saying? He is prepping people. It is what they called it tamheed lit-tatbi', that he's just prepping and preparing the masses to accept Israel. That's what he's doing. He's kind of giving these speeches. Some people took to defending him, saying, well, look, what has he actually said? He just said that we should have good manners. Is there nothing wrong with, does not Islam teach us to have good manners even with the enemy? So this is the whole kind of drama that has been blowing up recently. So what are my thoughts? We have to, I have to contribute as well. My 2 pence, my 2 pence. That कभी गौर तूने किया नहीं कि ये लोग कैसे उजड़ गए, कोई मीर जैसा गिरफ्ता दिल तेरे सामने की मिसाल. आय ओफ आय कोई मीर जैसा गिरफ्ता दिल. That you've never paid attention how these people became desolate and were destroyed. Even though the likes of Mir, whose heart had been conquered, was lying right there before you as an example. Vah Mir ji vah, koi Mir jaisa girafta dil tere samne ki misal. So what are my thoughts on this? Well, look, I don't really know what to say. I feel that, in all honesty, right, first of all, I have to be clear that Israel's behavior is, as always, utterly unacceptable. It is just an absolute thug. That's what Israel is, for the most part. Now, that said, I feel that, and I've said this before, I spoke about when I spoke on the UAE situation, I said that I feel that Muslims need to awaken from their slumber. They need to understand that, unfortunately, and with a heavy heart, but this is now, like, this battle is lost. People have to know when to cut their losses. You see, you can't. The problem is we're in this kind of dream state that we don't know what somehow miraculously everything is going to change. It isn't. Right? Now, sometimes you have to just cut your losses. Take an example from the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. The Muslims realize that this is a lost situation. Like, we are not in right now. It is futile And it is not only futile, it is negatively impacting us to resist. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, all right, fine, I'll have this peace treaty. And he agreed, and he agreed to certain terms that were really painful. They were painful to the Prophet ﷺ. And, you have the famous hadith of Umar that he said that, if I've ever seen a day of powerlessness, it was Yawma Abi Jundal. It was the day of the Sulh of Hudaybiyah, when Abu Jundal comes running, and he's a Muslim and he's being tortured, and he comes running up to the Prophet now that he hears that the Muslims are here, and they've just signed this. They're just coming to terms on this agreement that's saying, well, okay, we will go back. We won't do this. We won't attack. We won't do this. We won't. Mentioning all these kind of things which really were against the Muslims. The odds were stacked against the Muslims, against the Prophet, and he's accepting. It's saying things like, if a Muslim comes to you, you have to return him. If if a kafir, if a Muslim rejects Islam and comes to us, we do not have to return him. Very kind of handicapped terms. And whilst this is happening, Abu Jundal comes running, seeing all these Muslims. And he's saying that, look, finally, you guys are here. You're going to help me, right? This is it. And the Prophet says that we can't. And they drag him back. And this is where Umar says that they drag him by these kind of chains. And he says, if there was ever a day where I was so, exploding because of, one, the rage, but the rage being met with a helplessness, he said it was the day of Abu Jundal. But you see, and one could argue that, this was a life, and even though whether the person's not going to be killed, but he's being tortured for just being a Muslim. And why could the Muslims not just declare war there and then? Did they not have armor? Did they not believe in the help of God? Did they not? Was this? Of course, this was the Prophet. These were the same people that stood at Badr against an outnumbering army. Yet, at the Sulh of Hudaybiyah, the Prophet ﷺ realized that, he said that we can't, because this battle from where we stand is a lost scenario. Like, it is only, our victory is just a treaty, which is apparently a loss. But in that loss, inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, that we have granted you an incredible victory, but you just don't see it. Not yet. See, and the problem is we're too in our emotions. And I've said that I know people I think some people don't like it that I said that I said, really, I think that the main focus is the loss of life. And the Palestinians should be given an opportunity to be comfortably relocated elsewhere throughout the Arab world, with compensation, gratuitous, handsome compensation. So, when I said that, I had a message from someone. So I think, was it on Facebook or Instagram? But anyway, this lady messaged me from Europe, I believe. She's Palestinian. So she said, Mufti, I watch your things, and I admire, and I'm a fan and whatever. But she was deeply troubled by this thing that I said. And she said, right, that she says that you said that Palestine the Palestinians, for the sake of life, they should just be allowed to be relocated comfortably elsewhere at the expense of Israel, of course. So, and she said, I find that totally, like, she was disgusted at this thought, found it offensive, felt that this is right. So said that, look, this is, how can, these people long for their land. It is everything for them, their culture. Palestine is their identity. And, why should they renounce that? And this is utterly unacceptable. It's a kind of treacherous opinion that I've given. So I responded to her, and she was quite shocked that I responded. People get surprised, when I reply to their messages. They go, "Yeah, I wasn't expecting a reply." So I responded. I said to her that, look, I'm really grateful for her, first of all, her kind words, and I'm sorry that I offended her or any Palestinian with this thought. But you see, I kind of stand by this idea. Why? Because to me, what is land? You see, Ardullahi wasi'a, that God's green earth is vast. Allah says in the Quran. And these nation states, these are just social constructs that we've created. You go back a century, they didn't exist. There was no nation state. There was land, and people did associate with maybe certain parts, but people were much more fluid. Nobody's saying that if the Palestinians move, that they will lose their, I don't know, culture or food or music or genes or nobody loses these things. They will stay right there. Yes, you will have lost that land, but in all honesty, what is it right now anyway? It's hardly a paradise, is it? So let's just, now you could say, well, I feel that we will fight till the death. But I'm giving a perspective, a cool-headed perspective, that these things are not worth dying over. You see, to me, it's just a piece of land. Tomorrow, 500 years ago, people that lived on that land had no idea about you. And 500 years from today, people that will live on that land will have no idea of you either. It doesn't matter. क्या ज़मीन में फंस गए हो यार? You just got caught up about land and territory, and this to me is, but khair, it's people's choices, and this, it's not like they're going to listen to me anyway, but I'm just giving my my unwanted consultation. So yeah, it's because it is an outdoor prison. And somebody said, Mufti, do you think if they relocated the Palestinians, Israel would just stop there? It may not stop there. And this, by the way, is the reason the other Arab countries are not prepared to relocate Palestinians. They want them to be the buffer zone. But the difference is the other states they are a sovereign state. They have a military, they have borders reinforced, they have a defense system. Palestinians don't have they don't have anything. So they're just getting bombed ruthlessly. Whereas Israel, it can't just bomb Jordan. Jordan is a sovereign state that has an army, albeit an incapable one. But the point is, it still has an army. So it's not the same thing. Israel can't just invade the whole, it can't just go around invading nation states. But Palestine, it's not it's already done that with Palestine. Palestine is under Israeli control. So there is a huge difference there. Yeah, but that's my thoughts. And it's not to say that this is, that I'm kind of endorsing Israel. I'm not. I believe that they are absolute tyrants. terrorist state. But I feel that we just need to learn where to cut our losses. So cool. That's my thoughts on it. Wallahu a'lam. I don't know how the future will unfold. I wonder 100 years from today, when people look back, what they will think. Right, so Mufti, stun meat haram. Right, so right now, somebody said, yes, Mufti, alright, Neanderthals invaded Brum. Yeah, they have actually. Have you seen Alan Rock? Kazi, what's going on, Kazi? Neanderthals are already here. Right, what should we stun meat? What should we say, people? Should we vote it in or out? In or what I should have is like a poll where we just democratically decide. Oh, wait a minute, isn't that what the clergy already do? It's a democracy of truth. Right, so do I feel stun meat is halal? Yeah, I feel it is. You see, to me, I've got a video on stun meat where I said that in recent times I have reevaluated my positions, my positioning on on halal meat and the dhabiha meat, and I've come to the understanding that halal meat, the objective behind it was simply to demarcate, to create a distinction between Muslims, those who, or not even just Muslims, but those, the faithful, and those who, and the pagans, those who were engulfed in superstition and kind of heathen pagan rituals and making offerings to them. So it was really just to distinguish that this meat has not been offered to Odin or Lat or Uzza and such and such. So now that was the primary focus of the dhabiha meat, halal meat. The secondary focus was the identitarian aspect, that it's like a social glue that binds between Muslims wherever they are in the world. Hence the hadith says that man istaqbala qiblatana, whosoever faces our qibla, wa salla salatana, and prays our salah, wa akala dhabihatana, and eats from our slaughtered meat, fadhakal Muslim, then that is a person who is a Muslim. So these were the two objectives, the primary being distinguishing from pagan meat that is being offered to other gods. That was the primary focus, and the secondary focus was the identitarian aspect. So I feel that, and that's why, by the way, that in the past, hunted animals, those that, wild animals, you never had to slaughter them, because they were never offered as pagan offerings, as far as the Arabian context was aware. So people never used to offer tigers and lions or even deer, things like that. They weren't offered. It was the kind of more domesticated cattle and camels and goats and these kind of things that were offered. Chickens weren't. The Arabs never really had chickens, so that's quite strange when you think about it. Yeah. Not having chickens. Whoa. So that's actually quite strange. So I wonder what. Did they not used to eat eggs then? I guess not. They wouldn't have really had eggs unless they were eggs of other kind of birds. Interessante. So, right now, yeah, so I mean, coming back to this, so I feel today the secondary point still stands, the identity aspect, but the first one is mostly non-existent. Today, hardly anyone offers meat to gods, apart from Muslims. and Jews and whatever, but you know, it's very rare for people to offer meat as a sacrifice to their gods. That kind of thing, the world has kind of, with modernity, the world has grown out of that. So therefore, the first objective has become redundant. So the secondary objective of identity still remains. And thereby, I would say that yes, it is still important to have the biha meat and to use that generally, and to have that identitarian aspect, that kind of binding glue, social glue amongst Muslims globally. But that said, if it came to it, it wouldn't be haram to consume just say regular meat, not pork, but regular meat in these kind of societies. It would not be haram. I mean, it may be kind of, if you've got access to the biha meat, which is still a kind of a directive, more a recommended directive based on the identity aspect. So then it may be makruh, discouraged, to kind of go there whilst you've got this, but it wouldn't be haram, because the main objective was about sacrificing to other gods, which isn't really there. So based on that, if the meat was stunned, would that make a difference? Well, it wouldn't, because once again, the aspect is the same, that these are not offerings to other gods. Okay. Muslims, however, should not stun to kill. Okay, so if they do stun, then that is done to just kind of like tranquilize the animal, but then they should slaughter. And that is the kind of the heritage and the legacy. But stunned meat in and of itself would not be haram. It may be discouraged. It would probably be makruh and better not to go to, but it wouldn't be haram and sinful. That's in my understanding. Pork is clearly haram. But beyond pork, I'm talking about general meat. Alright, so I hope that yeah, and I do feel that the slaughtering is actually, I do feel it's actually very humane. I know that's like, everybody's like, कुछ ज़्यादा ही फेंक दिए. People are like, wah, 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 humane, wah, wah. That's the. But I do feel it is kind of humane, because it's almost instant that the animal loses consciousness. And it's just that the sight of blood is scary. You see, I feel that the sight of blood scares people, so they think that, oh my God, this is inhumane. But really, like, let's just take a look at the capital punishment in the West, for example, when it did exist and how it still exists. In America, for example. The Western world moving away from things like the guillotine and chopping the head off to things like, let's hang people, because they felt that hanging them was somehow more humane. But the truth is that it was just less messy for the observer. So it feels more humane because they don't see the sight of blood. So it's like, if I suffocate someone, because I'm not seeing blood, I feel it's more humane. Whereas if, let's say, you shot them in the head, now you're going to see splattered brains and blood everywhere, and the shock of it that the viewers are going to have, and the conductor, the executor, is going to have. So they feel that's inhumane. But the truth is, really, I'd assume that hanging is more inhumane. Then, rather, like, if a person was to be executed, you'd rather just say, just chop my head off. Because it would be instant. I mean, I'm just saying, I would, if I was to, now they catch me and they're like, I'm like, yaar, I was only joking, yaar. यार जोक भी नहीं समझते यार जोक दिस वन जोक
फंसा दिया ना तूने मुझे
फंसा दिया ना तूने मुझे
तेरे कहने में मैं आ गया इस वक्त बड़ी मुसीबत की घड़ी है
फंसा दिया ना तूने मुझे यार मैं तो वैसे ही बोल रहा था I was just saying it for Monday nights with Mufti but on a serious note I would feel that I would feel that if I had to be executed I would just rather say just chop my head off. At least it would be instant and it'd just be over. Rather than bloody hanging someone. What the hell? That's like, oh my god. I would actually say, can you just OD me on heroin? That would be like a better way to go. It would be like, and then you survive, but now you're just a junkie. Then you properly say so people, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I don't know if it makes any sense, but I feel that this thing of humane is to do with the sight of blood. So people think it's more humane, but it's not. It's just the same. I hope that answers. Whoa, alright, people. Mehrab Raza, you're doing it. Much love for the super chat. If Jesus had a father, why were people surprised when Mary presented Jesus? Why did they say she had done something unprecedented? Why did they mention that her father was not evil and her mother was not unchaste? Mehrab, that is a very good question. I have answered it before, but to go over it, obviously, super chat kiye hain, I have to. I'm joking. It's an epic question. You see, the Quran on this matter, I've got a video on this, by the way, and I do much more justice in that video if you watch it, called, if you just type my name and the virgin birth, not me giving the virgin birth, that would be incredibly strange. But the virgin birth, I go through the verses of the Quran and I explain and everything. So what we have to do, the thing is that in very early Christian literature, during the lifetime of Jesus, nobody is making a claim of a virgin birth. It would be preposterous for them to do so, because in all honesty, the Jews would have just stoned Mary. You really think they would care? If Mary had come back with a baby that was a miracle, and she said, this is a miracle baby, right? And I've had this with no father of the child, as in, to them, that's going to be translated as an affair, adultery, or it's the father is unknown, because they're not going to believe that that's obviously the Messiah of God. They would have just killed Mary. There is no, they would have sat down and really cared and would have gone through a long therapeutic process with her and spoken of due diligence and due process. No. This is 2,000 years ago, mate. They would have just killed her. There was no, two ways about that. So we know for a fact that this never happened. In the Gospels, nobody ever is claiming. In the Gospels, Jesus is never claiming that this was a kind of virgin birth, like in that sense. Right now, this is something that is being explained much after much after Jesus, this kind of that Jesus is the Son of God, and then what does the Son of God mean? And some, you see, there's Christian theologians that began to struggle with the concept of original sin, that they felt that because the sperm of man carries the original sin, Therefore, Jesus too would have the original sin. So to bypass that, they invent this thing of, well, you see, for Mary, this immaculate conception theory that she's conceived but without the sin, and for Jesus, there is no male sperm. So this is the kind of the byproduct. But in Jesus's lifetime, nobody believed that, that he was a miracle baby. But the concept of the virgin birth was a widespread concept. It wasn't something that Christians invented. The Romans have it. Many people have it, that this, God, Zeus, or the Greeks had it, that they impregnate women, certain virgins, who then give birth. And there's even coinciding with the era of Jesus, there's other people making these kind of claims. So that's there. The Quranic discourse is somewhat vague on this matter. So now it does mention that when Mary comes with Jesus, that they seem to be upset. But it doesn't explain what they're upset about. It mentions them reprimanding Mary, but it's not clear what they're reprimanding her about. Now, they seem to say that your father was not a man of a lowly character. And by character, like somebody who did bad things. ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغية. And your mother was not an unchaste woman. Now, later Muslims automatically, because of the word unchaste, they immediately join the dot with a virgin birth. But this is them reading into the text. The text isn't actually stating that, they are reading into it. In my understanding, this is more referring to the incident, I believe, in the Gospel of Luke, where, I believe it's the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus, as a young boy, is brought to Jerusalem. Now, he does visit Jerusalem often, most likely every year, or, most years. Now, on this particular incident, when the caravan is setting off back, he is missing. Jesus is missing. And Mary comes back looking for him, and eventually they find him after a number of days. And he is sitting in the temple arguing and debating with the priesthood. This has really annoyed them, because the high priests and generally the clergy, these people did not tolerate normal Jewish people debating them, let alone a child. So they found this incredibly ill-mannered. They found it as very low, and they were probably on the verge of punishing Jesus. Now, Mary comes and she reclaims him, and that he's her son, and she's apologizing. And this is what they're saying to her, that what is wrong with this child? That, you seem to be somebody that, your father is of a stature and a good status, and your mother's not an unchaste. It's not like she's somebody off the streets. Can you not give any tarbiyah to your child? Can you not give him a decent upbringing? How dare he speak to us in the temple in this manner? Does he not know the etiquettes of the temple? So this is what is going on. And she does try to say that, tries to get him to explain himself, and they rebuke her and rebuke him by saying, كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا? You want us to talk to a little boy? من كان في المهد صبيا? A little boy who was just, in his cradle? Now, he's obviously not in his cradle. That's why they use the word sabi, which is a young boy. A sabi can be somebody, it's not a tifl. Tifl is a baby that is in a cradle, or a radi'a, somebody that's absolutely, and a tifl can extend to a toddler, and a sabi is usually somebody maybe 5 years of age all the way up until about 10, 11, something like that. A sabi, a young boy. So they say, how could you expect us to speak to a boy who was man kana fil mahdi sabiya, who was just in a cradle. It's like when people would say to someone, "You want me to talk to him who was just yesterday in his nappies." This does not mean that the person was yesterday in his nappies, but this is a figure of speech. So that is what this discussion was most likely about. Any other fitting is really just what I feel Muslims kind of took it that way, because some Muslims, because they kind of bought into the narrative of the Christian narrative. By Islam's time, there was this Christian narrative that of the virgin birth. In fact, it happened within a century or two. It was concretized after Jesus. So by the time Islam came, it was definitely there. So Muslims also bought into it. Maybe not all, but some Muslims. And there are some books that people have written against it. There is a book by Maulana, by Sheikh Inayatullah al-Wazirabadi al-Gujarati, who has a book. He was from the 20th century, early 20th century, pre-partition, and then of India, and he has a book called Uyun Zamzam fi Wiladat ibn Maryam, in which he speaks and explains this. He's not the only one. Maulana Sheikh Allama Tamanna Imadi also mentioning there was no virgin birth. There's this people, I believe, Sir Sayyid Ahmad as well from India, and other people have kind of challenged it as well. But it is, and both have their evidences from the Quran. So I would ask you to watch my video where I go through the evidences. Right, so what is going on, people? What is going on? Right, yep. Somebody said, Imam Mark Imam Mark saying, I've tried to look with an open mind at much of what you say, Mufti, but this is just pure deception. It isn't deception. I mean, this is the perspective. I mean, Sheikh Inayatullah Wazirabadi has a whole text on it. Other people have written on it. Allama Tamanna Imadi in his tafsir. Several other people. There was Sheikh Abu Khair. What was his name? Abu Khair al-Asti has a whole treatise on it. That Jesus had a father. The Quran does allude to that Jesus had a father. This, now it doesn't say it very clearly, but it doesn't say either. And if you look at both of them, it seems to allude more towards him having a father. That's in my perspective. Now, let me give an example. If you take the verses of what people feel are the virgin birth, none of them actually mention it was a virgin birth. It just mentions the response of Mary saying that she has not been touched yet. And that was part of the divine plan. It wasn't that what was to be conceived would be unnatural, just the same way the wife of Ibrahim in the Quran says, how can I have a child? And they say that it has been decreed. It didn't mean she just had a baby just like that and it was unnatural, that Ibrahim alayhi salam wasn't involved. Of course he was. And if you look at Zakaria, now, when he says, how can my wife have a baby, and he's told through revelation that it has been decreed, it doesn't mean she just has a baby. Obviously, there is, there is natural intervention. There was intercourse. So, but the Quran does not mention this with all three. So you've got the three people. You've got Abraham, his wife, Zachariah, his wife being mentioned, and you've got Mary being mentioned. Now, for these two, even none of them, it mentions that the husbands actually had sexual intercourse. But that's just understood. It's called ellipsis, elliptical kind of reading into something where you don't need to mention certain things. So people will say, oh, but we believe with Mary it was a virgin birth. they say this really because of what the Christians have said, not necessarily because of what the Quran said. When you look at the other verses that argue against a virgin birth, they are verses where Allah mentions several prophets. And He mentions Isa wa Ilyasa, and and He mentions Suleiman and Dawood, and Allah mentions Isa, and then He says, وَمِنْ آبَائِهِمْ, and from their fathers we chose as well. You see, آبَائِهِمْ, that we selected their fathers as well. Isa not mentioned in that verse? He is. Now one could say, well, he's an exception. Yes, he is in the verse. So apparently the verse is saying that his father as well. آبَائِهِمْ. That his father, because it mentions all the prophets, and then it mentions Isa as well. So now one could argue that, okay, but this is an exception, and that does happen in Arabic sometimes. So you will get, you will get these exceptions. But then the response to that is, sorry, I'm just trying to. What I'll do is I'll just bring it up actually. Let's see. Right, so if I just go into it to just read it. Now it mentions, look, we are in Surah Al-An'am. You've got verse 84 to 85, and then it's going forward as well. It mentions, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ, and we gave them, we gave him Ishaq, Isaac, and Jacob. كُلًّا هَدَيْنَا, and we guided all of them. وَنُوحًا هَدَيْنَا مِنْ قَبْلٍ, and we guided Noah min qabl, before. وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي, and from his offspring. It mentions Dawood wa Suleiman wa Ayyub wa Yusuf wa Musa wa Harun wa kadhalika najzi al-muhsinin. And like that we reward those of ihsan. Wa Zakaria wa Yahya wa Isa wa Ilyas kullum min as-salihin. All are from the pious. Then Allah says, wa min abaihim, and from their fathers. Wa dhurriyatihim wa ikhwanihim. وَاجْتَبَيْنَاهُمْ وَهَدَيْنَاهُمْ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Verse 87. And from their fathers, and from their brothers, and their offspring we guided. Now, this is a verse of the Quran. I'm not making this up. And so, now you could say, well, okay. Now you could say that, one moment. Right, now you could say that, okay, that, but this is an exception for Jesus. Fine, I will accept that, but apparently, you have to be fair. The apparent reading is in favor of this. You can do a ta'wil and say that, okay, we want to exclude Jesus, even though the apparent reading does say that. So if I read out a bunch of names and then I said, all of these have retired. All of these, they were, they had parents of certain ethnicity. And then you say, well, yeah, but one of them, I didn't mean him. Okay, but when you say that, that's what's understood. Kullan, all of them. Then you might say, okay, no, but I want to do ta'wil. I accept your ta'wil. Bueno. Pero. Right. What's more important is, if I'd like to draw your attention to Surah Al-An'am, verse 101, where Allah mentions Badi'us Samawat, describing Allah who's brought the heavens and the cosmos into existence, and this earth. Then Allah says, Anna, how is it possible that he can have a child? وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبًا, and he did not have a female companion. Now you say, what's your point? So why would Allah mention that as an argument unless that was always the case? That whenever people were born, they had a mum and a dad. If here God is saying, how can he have a child when he didn't have a female companion? You're going to say, yeah, but just like how Jesus did. Then that shows Allah's argument is faulty. Allah doesn't have an argument here. That's just a false positive. There's no point. If Allah's killing the argument by saying, Anna yakunu lahu walad. How can God have a child if he did not have a female companion? But if you're going to say, like in that case, then that just kills the argument. God doesn't have an argument left. So the only way this argument is categorical is if all humans that are born from a mother and a father. That is the only way God's argument in this verse, Surah Al-An'am, stands. When he says, Anna yakunu lahu walad, walam takun lahu sahiba. So with that, people, the defense rests its case. But I'm happy. I would love to, Imam Mark, I would love to have a discussion. If you're prepared to have a discussion on Mindtrap, I will bring you on and we can discuss this. Or if you wish to, ask somebody else if they want to come on with me, and I will discuss this in great depth. Look, I'm not knowledgeable. Either you're not as knowledgeable in Arabic. Chalo, ye bhi theek hai. Or you put on, or you have an ulterior motive. Ulterior motive. What could my ulterior motive possibly be? Am I being funded by the Vatican? And this is ridiculous because this doesn't serve the Christian motive, because the Christians do believe in the virgin birth. So I can't be helping the Christians by saying there wasn't a virgin birth. And what possible motive could I have? And I haven't invented this opinion. There's been a whole bunch of ulama, and I will, if you come on Mindtrap, I will read them out to you. And we can test the arguments. Test the evidence. Bring any hadith, ayat of the Quran, bring any ayat of the Quran that you feel prove this. I tell you, there isn't a single verse of the Quran that mentions of a virgin birth. And the verses to do with Mary are quite symbolic and metaphorical. They're not actually, nobody believes them to be entirely literal. Take the verse speaking of her birth. Maryam allati ahsanat farjaha. Mary who had preserved, and ihsan with a sad is a verb that is used often for marriage. Ahsanat farjaha. Fanafakhna fi. So God breathed into the private parts of Mary. No Muslim believes that. That doesn't, no Muslim on earth believes that God physically breathed into Mary's private parts. But so that verse of the Quran that is referring to her virgin birth, nobody takes that literally. They understand that to just mean, this was a good, it's saying that it's a good being. That is it's to state that it is blessed, this creation. That's what it's kind of symbolic for. It does not mean that literally God or Gabriel went and breathed into Mary's private part. That would be blasphemous to believe that. But yeah, Salafis do. Yeah, of course, ignoring the Salafiyah. they don't count on philosophical things. But I even doubt that Salafis would openly say that. I don't know if they will actually. I'd like to know. Right, people. So that's... but I am happy if Imam Mark is still there, or if other people are there. I am happy to have a discussion with any sheikh on this matter. What more is there to say, huh? कोई मीर जैसा गिरफ्ता दिल तेरे सामने की मिसाल. You see, I is right here. So I'm happy to have a discussion. If this is very easy to, it's like Gangu Teli was saying, Baba Farid Gangu Teli, oh, his arguments are so easy to tear apart, so easy. If it's easy to tear apart, just come on and tear them apart. Yeah, I honestly would. If I disagreed with somebody's arguments and I thought they're so easy to take apart, I would just, if they invited me, I would just go on and I would pick them apart so easily. And so the problem then is that either my arguments are strong. This aren't strong, this on that in the words of the poet, that لو كنت حديدا لكسروني, that if I was made out of iron they would have broken me. لكني أشد من الحديد. He said, well, it's a good thing I'm stronger than iron. But yeah, so right, what's the next question? Oh, by the way, I just want to say here a quick point here, that I'm not saying to anyone that you need to believe my views. I don't say that to anyone, okay? I have friends, teachers, students who, followers who believe some of what I say, maybe some of it they don't believe, maybe they don't believe most of it, maybe they believe most of it, maybe they believe more or less all. I've never said to people, this is what you should believe. And people can say to me, look, Mufti, I disagree with you. I'd say, absolutely, even I disagree with me on so many occasions. So it's all good. I've never said to people, follow my belief. I'm just presenting this belief in saying, look, this makes sense. Maybe it makes sense to someone watching this and they think, actually, that makes sense. Maybe to other people it doesn't make sense, so they reject it and they say, okay, fine, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to get offended. I'm not here to try and say, I want everybody to believe not at all. Right, so right, let's move on. What else was there, people? What else? Right, what did I say I was going to speak on? Oh, right, so we're going to speak on the Charlie Hebdo. Right. Oh, before we get to that, Neuralink. Let's speak about the Neuralink, people. Right, so those of you that are aware, Elon Musk has made a fascinating announcement, people. Now, he's brought about this new technology which is called Neuralink, and he's been speaking about it for a little while. To be fair, the technology in and of itself, it's an invasive brain chip, okay, which is ahead of its age, kind of mind-breaking. It's meant to, this is the vision, it's meant to have mind, breaking, shattering, not consequent achievements to it. Now, brain chips are not something that is entirely new. Okay, being able to impact the brain using chips. There's already something called Utah arrays. Okay, that is already has been used. It's actually approved by the FDA in America for usage. What they do is they implant this kind of they're like tiny needles into a certain area of the brain, usually on the kind of sensory motor cortex. Okay, that to do with movements. Usually that's the kind of region that they will plant this. It's a strip over the top, just behind the neofrontal cortex. You've got the sensory motor cortex. They will plant it there, generally speaking. And what that allows is they can stimulate that, which will then trigger the electrical circuitry of the brain and they can learn to manipulate that. Okay, so with Utah arrays, you've got patients that have been, for example, paraplegic or sorry, not maybe some paraplegic, but disabled, sometimes paralyzed, or they've lost limbs. And what they do is there's a robotic arm, and with the Utah arrays, they can control. So they will they have to train, obviously, they have to train to do it. And they get the arm, which eventually they realize, like when I think like this, like they will try to move your arm. So for example, now you may think, well, if you don't have an arm, how do you try to move it? Is maybe point here, yeah. That's so they train people, and they use multiple techniques. There's a mirroring technique as well that is used, where what you do is you place a mirror and you put this arm here, and you can see the reflection of this arm as the other arm. Now, it's not actually your other arm because you don't have another arm in this scenario, but what you then do is, because the mind, the visual cortex is so overwhelming, it sees as though you have another arm. So then you try to move it. And even though you can't move it, obviously, because that's actually this arm, but what your brain does is it signals that part that was meant to move it. So this is certain ways, and there's other techniques as well, for which it falls under what they call biofeedback. Now, they train the individuals to be able to move remotely controlled, robotic arms and things like this, which could hopefully be maybe used later on. They could even create an exoskeleton that could help paralyzed people get up, maybe help people walk. It could do all kinds of things. Now, that's already in existence, okay, these Utah arrays. The problem with the Utah array is, if you see them, you can see it on YouTube, it has a huge kind of an output socket, which is in the head, okay? And they have to plug like an actual adapter, which is probably about the size of this, maybe a bit thicker, onto that socket. And then this has a bunch of cables coming into a huge processor that is then stocked behind them. And so they can only use this Utah arrays whilst in that, whether it's in the lab or wherever they are in those clinics, specific clinics. It's not something you can just walk around with. It's not that advanced. So Elon Musk has jumped on the game, and he's revolutionized it. So what he's done is introduced this Neuralink, which is way ahead of the game. So it's like saying, what he's promising is, it's like saying the phones exist, the phone lines exist, but we're going from dial-up to mobile phones and everything that mobile phones can potentially do. I mean, there's a world of a difference, but the concept of phones already exists. So he's saying that, one, they will use a much less invasive chip, okay, that is small. The kind of the needles it has are ultra fine. I mean, they are 1/20th the size of a strand of hair, much smaller than what the Utah arrays were using. They were using, I believe, 0.1 millimeter or something. And then that had a problem because the brain would react, because the blood-brain barrier would react to it and cause an infection sometimes. Whereas at this thinness, this is like, it's like 0.0 something. 0.0 whatever it is it's with, but it's like, it's incredibly, significantly much more fine and thin than the Utah arrays. And where the Utah arrays were capable of reading brain signals, so let's say it's placed on the sensory motor cortex. Now, they could read something like 265 signals that were coming out. With Neuralink, it has been reported to have the capacity to read 3,000 and I think 40 or something, but over 3,000 signals. I mean, that's gone from 200 to 3,000. That is huge. So it is amazing. It's very kind of wow, absolutely. And what he's done is, the other thing is, he's saying wireless. Although in Elon Musk, in his interview, in his kind of speech on it, he doesn't explain how. The truth is, it can't be entirely wireless, because it would just require way too much to project that, because he's saying it's going to be connected to your phone. It's it's not going to be connected to your phone like that. It can't right now. They don't have that technology. This is just him, just selling it. Now, what they're most likely going to do is have something which you wear behind your ear, which then reads the signal from there, and the device behind your ear then projects it to your phone. Because you couldn't, the chip inside could not have, wouldn't have that capacity to be able to project it to Bluetooth and things like that. कुछ ज़्यादा ही फेंक दिए, he just blagged a bit too much there. Elon Musk has then gone on to announce, look, we're looking to do wonderful things with it, cure blindness. We're aiming to maybe, telepathy, communicate without language, have things like upload memories, store thoughts, be able to maybe in the future download things into your brain. I mean, all of this right now, for where we stand, is still very much sci-fi. I think it's an amazing, intriguing thought, but you see, the brain, the sensory motor cortex is different, because it operates with movement. Like, you activate it and it moves. It does these kind of things. The prefrontal cortex, or these other parts of the brain, we may understand that they deal with certain parts, the Wernicke kind of region, dealing with language, but thoughts and ideas and memories, these things are not like, we don't know how where they're situated. It's not like I've got actual, this memory of me sitting one day on a beach is over here, and this one is over. It doesn't work like that. So nobody knows how the brain stores things. I mean, they know that this region is involved in memories and so on, like the hippocampus area and other regions are involved with memory and other things. But how does it store them to be able to upload them and back them up? And this is still very much, we don't know that much about the brain, unfortunately. But what are my thoughts about Neuralink? I'm very excited. I think it's amazing. Obviously, I don't know whether I would ever volunteer to to have a chip in my head, but I feel on one hand it is daunting as well, that because things like this do show that being controlled, if somebody could just shut you down remotely. Can you imagine if they could hack into your brain and like the government could just make you have an epileptic fit? These thoughts are very scary. That said, I am still very all for this technology, because I believe for the most part it is about curing people, it's about medicine. So I'm absolutely for that. I hope it is a success, inshallah. So, but I do recognize those scary things of being controlled, being hacked, becoming, this is the next stage of evolution. But I do feel we are at the next stage of evolution, that, we are, as, Harari says in his book, Yuval Harari, that there is Homo Deus. We are now moving from Homo sapien to Homo Deus. So that's, it's interesting times, people, interesting times. There's another, right, Mahrab Raza, shukran, much love for the super chat. You're doing it. You said Yasser Qadi brought up the Quran's authenticity, but he said classical explanations can't answer. Also said H. Sophia, or Aya Sophia, shouldn't have been converted from the church to the mosque, but it was converted from museum to the mosque. Thoughts, don't ban me. No, Mahrab, we're not going to ban you. आप जो इतने super chats दे रहे हैं, you're giving all these super chats. Banning you would be a mistake. No, just messing. Right, so yeah, look, I've got very detailed videos on this, or detailed enough. So do watch it, please. I'm obviously against the Hagia Sophia being converted to a masjid. I understand it went from a museum to a mosque. That was your point, that it's going from, it's not going from a church to a mosque. It's going from a museum to a masjid. I understand that. But you see, look, to me, what Erdogan is doing is it's not very different from what Modi is doing in India. He is just playing to a religious, fanatic, populist crowd. That's all he's doing, because he just wants to secure himself. You can't, on one hand, have issues with what Modi is doing with the rise of populism and the far right in India, have issues with that, and then on the same hand, on the same token, be all okay with what Erdogan is doing. He is doing the same thing. He's just trying to be this Islamic hero and the rise of Islam in Turkey. But the truth is, Turkey is a secular state. You have to understand that. All these countries are secular states. They're not an Islamic state. So they need to stop acting as though they are an Islamic state. Yes, you can do great things for Muslims, but you have to recognize that the Christians too are citizens they have an equal standing in your country. They are not second-class citizens. It is a citizenry. It's a nation state. It's not a khilafah. Okay. It's not an empire that you've got here. So we have to remember these things. We have to be moderate. And what does it achieve? All it achieves is a little pat on the back from the Muslim right wing. Why? Who needs these masjids? You've got a masjid right there. I did a whole talk on it. 4 minutes walk is the blue masjid. But do watch my talk, inshallah. Right. Mufti, why do you think Elon Musk was over predicting? It's not, you see, because those things currently are just unknown. It's like if Elon Musk was to announce, okay, we're going to be doing time travel. It's just not, we don't have that right now. Although we have certain theories, but we don't have how the brain works with thoughts. Where do thoughts reside? Because the brain just has neurons. It's just working in an electrochemical manner. It all looks the same. Where does the idea of capitalism reside? Where does the thought of a critical analysis that you might have conducted reside? It doesn't work like that. Like, how you're thinking that, this is the issue. But I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible for the future, but I don't feel we are there yet. That's all. Right. So, all right. People, Pakistanis have no identity. That's a rude statement. I'll just have to put that user in timeout. Please, no racist comments or things like that. Right, okay, but I do have a very detailed discussion on identity to do with Pakistan. It's a mind trap with Dr. Yusuf Raza. Do watch it. We discuss a lot of this. And I am very critical. Okay, so do check that out. Cool, people. Right, let's speak briefly on the whole Charlie Hebdo issue. And what do we think about this? Okay, now, everybody is probably aware that what's happened is Charlie Hebdo have decided to republish the cartoons on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to coincide with the trials of the perpetrators. So what do I think about this? This has triggered a bit of a back and forth on social media, as you can imagine, a bit of an uproar. My thoughts on this. Firstly, I want to be clear. I would advise all Muslims, please do not react. Okay? Even if somebody insults the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or they insult God, or they insult the Quran, or they insult, do not, definitely do not physically react, please. I mean, this is exactly the reaction they want. Okay, they want to show that Muslims are a bunch of barbarians. So do not give them what they want. You're just running, you're not even walking, you're running into it. So that would be my first plea to all Muslims. Secondly, I would state that, look, no matter what anybody says, they do not harm Allah, they do not harm His Messenger, they do not harm this deen. These things are preserved. Okay? Somebody can rip up the Quran, they can chew it, spit it, set fire to it. The deen of Islam has stood the test of time. Okay? The Quran and Islam are here to stay, whether you like it or you hate it. So that is the fact. That is a fact. That is the reality. And people, despite their bitterness, need to get with the program. Now, so just clearing that up. So there's no need to become insecure. Right? We are very secure about our faith, or we should be. Right, now that said, what do I think of this? I find these things like these cartoons absolutely ridiculous. I do find it preposterous. And I find it's not freedom of speech, okay? I mean, it's not about that. Let me explain. You see, freedom of speech to me is people criticizing the Quran. Criticize it. I would be happy for people who disagree with the Quran to criticize it. Critique it. You find rulings in it absurd? Say, such and such ruling is absurd. I find this ridiculous. Ha 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 ha. How can a God do this? Ha 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 ha. Do that. I support your right to do it. And I feel that people should have the right, not only that I feel that people should have the right to express their critical views. You want to satirize something, satirize it. Because you want to show, when you satirize something, usually you show the dumbness of it. Yeah? So this is what you're doing. This, however, you see, so that's just putting that out there. Drawing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Prophet is, let's just say, being ridiculed, not for his ideas, not for his concept, not for his religion. Maybe in some, okay, there are some where this is happening, okay, but in others, just he's being ridiculed sexually, he's being ridiculed, on these kind of, you're just insulting. Just insulting. This is not, this is not about ideas anymore. This is just about insulting the Prophet. And the question is, why are you insulting the Prophet? And the point is, because we can. And because we can, we want to prove that we can. Otherwise, we clearly can't, which is then it's an encroachment on our freedoms. So it's like saying, because I have the right to speak, I have the right to insult your mum, and because if I don't do that right now, then obviously I'm encroaching, me withholding is an encroachment on my freedoms of expression. Therefore, look, there is something known as civility. There is, humanity, empathy. These things are real human realities, right? Just this thing which, we call this badmashi, this kind of badmashi principle, that this Thrasimican kind of ground on which they're building this, that might is right. I'm doing it because I can. What are you going to do about it? You know, this is the angle that they're coming at. I absolutely condemn that approach. I don't condemn them criticizing Islam. I don't condemn them criticize. I, in fact, support their right to criticize Islam and criticize God. You know, if you have a problem with something of God, you have the right to say, I look at this, how can a God say this? Say that. If you have a problem with something of the Prophet, say it. On most occasions, it's probably wrong anyway, wrongly attributed to him, but say it. If you have a problem with certain verses of the Quran, say it. But to do things on this kind of Thrasimican principle, this might is right, that I'll do it because I can. I'll insult you because I can. Now let me ask you something. Why can't you do that with racism? Why can't you just, let's say a person comes up and he says, I hate all Pakis. Just a view. He's just saying, look, it's the truth. I'm expressing it. I'm just expressing my feeling. Why is that wrong? Because I'm not doing anything violent. I'm not saying, I never said attack Pakistani people. I just said, oh, I hate all Pakis. Or I said, Pakis stink. Or I said something like this. All Pakis are sexual predators. This is inflammatory language. It is racist language. It's actually illegal. But the question is why? Race is a social construct. It doesn't actually exist. It's not ethnicity. There is a distinction between ethnicity and race. Pakistan is an entity that has only come into, it's a fictitious entity that has only come into existence so many decades ago, and it only exists because we all agree that it exists. It doesn't actually exist. It's not an actually tangible thing. Now you could say, oh, well, you know, oh, but you can't do anything about your race. Well, you can. Races change all the time. Countries dissolve and new countries sometimes emerge. The person now racially has a new racial identity. Right? It is not the same as your ethnicity, or which is based on a genetic makeup. That is different. You could be an Arab, but are you a Jordanian Arab? Are you what is Jordan? Do you belong to Qatar? Do you belong to what? These things are just entities that have come into existence within a few decades. They don't actually exist. They exist in our minds, but they don't exist as an entity. The land does exist, but the nation is just it's an illusory, it's a psychosocial entity. So people clearly understand why it's wrong to just insult race. They clearly understand. But I ask you, do races not have problems? They do. So why do we understand so clearly that it's wrong to just pick on races? Races do have problems. It is true that Pakistan suffers from so many integral problems, including populism, fundamentalism, religious fanaticism, misogyny, abuse. It is true. Racism, that it suffers from these things. But to pick on a race, why do we recognize that is wrong? Yet when it comes to Islamophobia, people say, oh, but this is just a religion. Yeah, but you see, okay, a religion is a psychosocial entity, but so is a race a psychosocial entity. And to these people, it is very dear. It is incredibly dear. Now, I'm not saying you can't criticize that religion. By all means, criticize it. By all means, criticize. I support your right to criticize the religion. Tear it to pieces. Show us where it's wrong. I absolutely support you in that. But to just do this kind of badmashi, this kind of like Thrasimican thuggery, that, oh, because I can, I'm going to insult because I can. That is not a reflection of human empathy. Yes, I mean, you can, that is true, and people will say, oh, Islamophobia, what is Islamophobia? Look, I want you to just pause for a moment, think about this. You have to understand where the Muslim world is coming from. They are coming from being hit from so many angles. Let me give you an analogy, people. I want you to this. It's just an approximation, okay? But think about this. There is a person. You take a millionaire, a multimillionaire, yeah. And you take a tramp or somebody that is very poor, incredibly poor, beneath the poverty line. Now, you get a multimillionaire, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, or whoever, you get these people, they decide to walk out in some torn slippers. Why? Because they can. It's true, they can. Because everybody knows that they are millionaires. You see, they can even wear, they could wear some torn clothes. I don't mean fashionably torn, but they could have some crappy clothes on, some cheap, I don't know, car. They could do whatever. But people might say, oh my God, they're stingy. But okay, leave that example of the cars and stuff. But let's say how they actually dress. So he walks out one day wearing some absolute trampy slippers. Nobody would say anything. In fact, they will say, look at his confidence. Wah. He doesn't care what people have to say. But I tell you people, it is much easier to be disregarding of wealth when you have it. It's not so easy when you don't have it. फिर पल्ला कुछ भारी पड़ जाता है. It gets, like, you see, when the tramp or the person who is incredibly poor, even if he's not a tramp, but he's poor, he's struggling. When he walks out, if he walks out with those kind of trampy slippers, that is an incredibly powerful slap in his face as a reminder of all his struggles in life. He is being reminded of the very things that this world does not allow him to have. He is being reminded of why his children do not enjoy those opportunities because of this poverty. Him walking out like that disheveled, and Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or these other people walking out disheveled, these are universes apart. See, in a similar way, with this thought, I want you to bring it back to this discussion. The Muslim who is in the Muslim world, beneath the poverty line, being struck from all angles, and I'm not saying they're not at fault, they are at fault as well, but they are being struck. They see this world that is the first world, that is thriving, flourishing, it's got all kinds of amenities, luxuries. They see them, and then this slap in the face about religion as well and Islamophobia. That, you see, it's not the same. They have all these other calamities. Yes, if the level was, if the plane was leveled and they were on equal grounds, they were like first world countries, I feel that they wouldn't really be as bothered by these kind of flagrant insults. It wouldn't bother people as much. But because they see that, all these people are always picking on us, we are always powerless. So it comes back as another slap in the face for them. And it is true that, look, in the Western world, just as people do discriminate on race, they discriminate on a person being a Muslim. It is true, and it is undeniable that when people see Muslims, they envisage certain stereotypes and they do certain things to block them. That you cannot deny Islamophobia as real as racism. I don't see it very different to, there's a different term for it, but it is just a form of racism that is aimed at just Muslims. And you could say, well, Islam isn't a race. I know, but a race is a psychosocial construct and religion is a psychosocial construct. and you're just discriminating based on social constructs, which is opposed to discriminating based on, let's say, disabilities. Although some disabilities I understand, but generally disabilities. So just to be clear, people do. So you will get sometimes people are more discriminatory. There's been several studies that have been done on Islamophobia. People that have made same applications, people that have gone for job interviews, people that when they see a girl with a hijab, when they see a guy with a beard, when somebody's, you sit on a plane, you go on a train, you have a beard. It is not the same. These people are living different realities. So when you keep slapping down on them just because you can, it lacks that human sentiment. So that's what this is why I do absolutely, I am critically against these kind of things. I see no point to it except a thuggery. And this Charlie Hebdo thing, let me tell you, I sincerely question their motives. They have lost over 50% of all their following, yeah? Last year, their following had reduced from over, 100 and something thousand followers down to just something like 40,000 or something like this. This stunt, I feel, it's only, as people will say, it's all for the gram. It's all for the gram. This is a new illness of this age. That anything for attention. That they just we want to gain more followers. We want to once again gain people's sympathy, get out there. We want to become relevant once again by creating a stir. So we want people to once again say, oh my God, masakin, bechare, being attacked by Muslims. I sincerely doubt the sincerity. They said themselves that we've lost so much following and this and that, and we need to, I seriously, and I feel that this is a common thing. It's ubiquitous. So many people are suffering from this, all for the grammitis kind of bloody disease that is out there. That they just, I saw this clip on Instagram, this guy, he's on some rooftop and it's like a V, it's connected to the other building, and they're incredibly high. God knows how many stories high. It must be like at least 20 stories high or something. And so he could just climb up by just from this building to there, but there is like a V gap. So, and that's just all the way down. It's just this building and that building adjacent, kind of stuck together like that, the roofs. And instead of climbing up, he jumps like this and holds on and climbs up. And just watching it, you get anxiety. Because the camera kind of looks down and shows you how far down it is. And there's like zero margin for error. Now, somebody asks in the caption that, why though? Why would you? Seriously? Because you could just climb, you could just walk here and just climb the next roof. And somebody had rightly so responded, why else? For the gram. It's just to be on Instagram, for the likes, for the attention. And this is my point, and I feel that a lot of people suffer from this. And I know I said this before, an apostate prophet responded with a video. I haven't watched all his videos, so I wasn't going to really respond. But it is true, him saying that, Mufti Abu Layth saying that, why is it some ex-Muslims just do their sob story on repeat? But it's true. It's just a sob story, like I get the fact, and his point, he said something, somebody told me he said something like, I do this to create an awareness about apostasy. Right, okay, fine. You want to create an academic awareness, you want to create that's fine, but realistically, you don't bring any dialogical, intellectual kind of dialogue to any table. All you bring is your experience of having had a bad time. And I get that, and that's sad, and I'm with you that it shouldn't have happened, and it shouldn't happen to anyone. But, look, you got to stop enough with this kind of like blah, 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 blah. The world don't owe you anything. You need to get over this reality, this kind of mentality of the world owes me something. It doesn't owe you anything. You need to get up and make your place in this world. Just like crying that, oh, I've been done onto. It is sad. I agree with you. It's wrong. I condemn it. But okay, it's not happening right now. So you need to move on. I'm fine. Create an awareness. I'm not saying don't create an awareness. You say, I'm creating an awareness to help other apostates leave. And is that how you do it? You do it by, this is how I'm creating an awareness. I'm ripping the Quran and spitting on it. Acha. You're creating a more hostile. It's like two people are about to, this situation is a bit tense, and you say, okay, I'm gonna diffuse it. I get up and I insult his mom. Acha, logic, huh? This one. This one, Einstein, Meanwhile, UN get happy that somebody's come to settle it, to make a peace. And as soon as he gets there, he's like, your mum's like this, and meanwhile, UN are like, you naughty, you teasing me. Acha, peace agreement. So you're trying to make things easier for apostates by riling up the Muslim fanatics. This, अच्छा, आप वहां से आ रहे हैं. अच्छा, समझ गए. अच्छा, this one, this one backside, huh? This. So yeah, that's my point on these things. Yeah. So that's what it is, people. You have to know. The logic has to be on point, people.
Don't chill, bro.
Rami logic, guys, we got to wrap this up soon. So okay, let's see. Right, what is going on? Somebody said salam from Toronto. Shukran wa alaikum assalam. Want to apply for a government job which governs the gambling in Ontario. Is this haram even though I don't gamble? No, it's not haram to work in which oversees legislation or things like this, or it oversees regulations of, let's say, certain gambling locations, casinos, things like this. You're simply doing your job, which I take it is more to do with paperwork on the regulatory side of things. It's not, you're not actually gambling. And remember, for them, it is absolutely permissible. We have to remember something, that non-Muslims are not addressed with the Sharia. Please, let's get over this. Qadi Iyad explains this very clearly. Speaking of Qadi Iyad, I will be beginning my class this Wednesday. Alright, people, the Qawa'id al-Qadi, which, that book over there, right, which are the Foundations of Islam by Qadi Iyad, beginning this Wednesday, 8 p.m. at the Ark, people, in Brum, in the Rock. Alright, at the Ark, in the Rock, in Brum. Alright, if you're interested, you got to reach out to Shaban. It is a capped capacity due to COVID. It won't be streamed live, but we will put the recording up later on, maybe a couple of days later or stuff. Yeah, so due to COVID restrictions, you have to register. So contact Muhammad Shaban on Facebook or at Shabi on Insta, SHAABI, and he'll kind of sort you out. Alright, so what are we looking at? Yeah, somebody said Mufti promised a video. Did not the Sahaba gamble on improve hadith? Looking forward to it. You're not going to do it in a mosque. Oh damn, do I need to do it in a mosque? Nah, hell no, I'm not doing it in a mosque. You don't need to do it in a mosque. It's not we'll have a distance. Isn't it my choice? Isn't it just on public transport that you have to wear a mask? It's not in your own building. That's like you have to sit at home wearing a mask. वाह. पीने से कर चुका था मैं तौबा मगर जलील. पीने से कर चुका था मैं तौबा मगर जलील बादल का रंग देखकर नीयत बदल गई. He says, I had done tawbah from drinking, but when I saw the clouds and the storm coming, I thought my niyyah just kind of did this turn, this U-turn. All right, people. So let's move on. All right, I think we need to wrap this up. You don't need a mask indoors. I don't think you need a mask indoors if it's your own place. I think if it's a public place, as in it's not a private building, that is, it's a public building. So if it's a private thing that is by you, then I feel you don't need, although it might be suggested. I don't think, it definitely can't be law. That would be ridiculous. I think that's just public transport, and I think certain public shared places for the public that are open to the public, they're not necessarily, even though I suppose they're commercially owned, but they are like supermarkets and stuff like that. Right. Is that apple juice? Hell no, man. This. Right. Did Imam Malik find hadiths of the sign of the hour problematic? They could be. Right, people, let's wrap this up. The final part I was just going to speak about was the masala segment, people. The masala segment. All right. So, people, there have been village wars once again. Village wars, okay? No, not a good thing. There's been village wars amongst the Brelviya, okay, amongst the Brelvis, okay, so.
Ghauri
aaya. Right, so there's been, what are these about? Who are these people involved? So, it's been quite interesting. Right, the village wars back in full effect. This, if I just, all right, now, peoples, those of you that are familiar, there is a Maulana Shahid Ali, part of the clergy from, I think Bradford or somewhere, I don't know, up north. And there is a Maulana Nabil Afzal. So these two people from the Brelwi community, there you can see, Tagre, Tandrust. Nabil are doing it. So these people have been, they've been going at it with each other. What on earth is all of this about? So basically it began with, there you can see, there they are. Nabil clearly, I think, needs to, I think there's a few health concerns there, but I suppose that happens in life. And Shahid, on the other hand, as you can see, well, I'll leave the concerns to you guys to analyze. So what's been going on is, those of you that remember a while back, this whole thing triggered up about Fatima radiallahu anha and some scholars in Pakistan. But since all of these people have offshoots in the UK, what you had in the UK was these people also, the war, it break the war, it starts over there and then it kind of trickles through. And so these two, who once upon a time, they were good friends, but, now they're at it, going at it with each other. And so what they've been doing is basically making a few videos against each other. Not so much discussing the issue, as people might think. What they've been actually doing is going at each other's Arabic. This reminds me of Johnny Boy. Usually something Jonathan Brown does, but if there's anything that can be done, obviously the Desis can do it better. So So you've got, there's been, if I just...
An unqualified individual has been recently...
This is a clip.
Scholars of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, maligning them, labeling them as nasibis.
So this is part of the
saying that they have
issue.
Not done enough research on mutala'a.
You should increase your mutala. You should increase your
mutala.
And then
Alhamdulillah, bifazlihi ta'ala. From my asatiza.
Fazli ta'ala.
From Aqaid of Imam Nasafi to Sharl Aqaid to Libras to Khiyali, alhamdulillah, all of them I've studied.
What we shall see today, though, is that this individual is unable to even read these texts, and he makes basic mistakes in Arabic grammar, which even an individual who has studied even basic introductory works on Sarf and Nahw will be able to understand and recognize these. You wouldn't go to a doctor who is bogus, who is unqualified. And
Ma'a.
as you can see from the clip, this individual is reading Ma'a, but the word is Ma'a. It is not elongated. If he is an imam, which I presume he is, I
presume that used to be his good friend, by the way.
Recite fluently with tajweed. If the tajweed is in
Ma'a adm al-qat'i bi ismatihi.
The dal with a sukoon, but this is Adam. Adam al-qat'i. It is Ma'a Adam al-qat'i. And he needs qat'a with a sukoon at the end. This is
you can't say qata'. You have to say qat'i.
Because this is mudaf ilayh. It is majroor. It should have a z.
Launch is wrong. हंसा दिया ना तूने मुझे तूने बता दिया ना तेरे कहने में मैं आ गया इस वक्त बड़ी
Ayo Shahid Ali, this cannot be read as Admul Qat'i because Qat'i has a kasra. Ayo, Shahid Ali is acting here as though he's the angel Jibreel. You know, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Arabic, you know the final vowel of a word often is omitted when people speak. It often is, to be fair. You know, like if you're to say something like he used to say Adam al-Qata, that is actually standard Arabic. There's nothing wrong. But him saying that no, he must pronounce it as Adam al-Qata'i. Ya sahib al-mu'allaqat. Gosh, man, the way Pakis overdo it. And then you've got Nabil Afzalji, who's Ma'a.
आज मेरे पास बिल्डिंगें हैं, प्रॉपर्टी है, बैंक बैलेंस है, बंगला है, गाड़ी है, क्या है तुम्हारे पास? मेरे पास माँ है.
Ma'a.
तुम्हारे पास क्या है तुम्हारे पास? मेरे पास गाड़ी है, बंगला है, ये मेरे पास Ma'a. That's actually, for the record, those of you that don't know, that's Ma'a. It sounds so silly when you say it just as it is, like Ma'a. The same one you say Ma'a salama, for example, goodbye in Arabic. So I thought, well, I came across this and I thought, no, seriously, are they fighting over this? Is this the village wars? That Ma'a Adam al-Qat'i. I thought, ayo Jibril, he thinks he's the angel Gabriel and he thinks that's the Quran. Yes, man, people. Right, so guys, with that, I think I should wrap it up. These people do have way too much time on their hands. So, guys, other than that, if there's any issues right now, I was just checking here if there was Right, guys, if there's any issues, anything, reach out to me. Instagram, Facebook. I will be checking more and more of the messages. I am beginning the class from this Wednesday, we should be taking a look at a bit on the intro to Qadi Iyad, his life, why, some amazing features about that, and then hopefully going into the first pillar of Islam. Cool, guys. I see petty nonsense. Absolutely. Views on Ghamidi Saab, absolutely awesome, of course. Talk to Shabir Yusuf. I have no idea who Shabir Yusuf is. What about Apis? Oh, I hadn't really watched his thing, so I didn't reply to it. But that was my brief reply to him. I genuinely feel that people need to move beyond the sub story on repeat, stop seeking the sympathy of just people, and they need to be proactive. If they want to be critical, but be proactive. Do something, bring something of value to the table. Guys, alright, other than that, all else is well. Those of you that aren't aware, I'm on Patreon. You could check that out, people. There it is. Patreon. Alright, we've got a few different things going on over there. There is a Telegram chat group, a resources group as well, where we share things. There is a group session that is also due for the Patreoncitos. I'm looking to do that next week. And there are some who have individual kind of sessions as well. Guys, as always, much love. Take very good care of yourselves. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatuhu ta'ala wa barakatuh. And people, I'm going to put up my page. Make sure you have liked, shared, subscribed. Yaar, ka ho raha hai? Ye kanjoosi ka hai ko? Why the stinginess, people? Why the stinginess? Cool. Do like, do share. Much love. Over and out. Stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum.